Okay, above are the situation of the terms we will use in this course, and different ideas, different definitions of different concepts. Now, I'm going to further define contemporary. I'm going to talk about the language and dialects of contemporary China using several maps. As I mentioned, there are many languages in China. If you use China here in a political sense, the People's Republic of China, right? Maybe nearly or more than 100 languages used in China. Here's a map showing the distribution of different languages and different dialects of Chinese language in China. That means there are at least 5 language families in China. Now, the most important one is Sino-Tibetan. China Han language belongs to this. And Indo-European, Austroasiatic, Altaic, and others. Here's the map of Sino-Tibetan language in China. We can notice that it shows the different dialects of Chinese language. For example, Mandarin is the major, very important dialect of Chinese language, and Jin Fangyan, and a group of southern dialects in China. They compose the Chinese language of Han ethnic. And also, Sino-Tibetan language in China includes the language of Tibetan, which is also largely occupied, distributed. And besides, beyond China, there are other related languages, such as Burmese and others in Sino-Indo Peninsula. They are related with each other linguistically. They form a family called Sino-Tibetan language family. Here's a hypothesis of the distribution or separation of Chinese language from other related languages. For example, Chinese language, Hanyu here, includes northern, including the Mandarin dialects, central and southern dialects. They use the same form of writing system. This is one of the very important reasons why we call them, in general, Chinese. We have related chapters or topics that will discuss them in the following chapters. And besides Chinese, we have Tibeto-Burman, including Bai, Jingpo, Xiang, Tibet, Nepal, Skin, and others. They are more closely related with each other, different from Han language. Okay, why do we call them the family, Sino-Tibetan family? They are related language. What's the reason we suppose they are related with each other? Here's a methodology to study, to reconstruct, or to compare the different languages in the same family. For example, we can know that the first column here is the meaning in Chinese. 我三名言于死杀毒, and others. An English translation. And here in this column, we have 普通话. The pronunciation of 普通话 is illustrated by 汉语拼音 here. 我三名言于死杀毒. 汉语拼音. And others are all expressed by IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. I'll talk about that, which is very important. I will illustrate the meaning and usage of IPA in the following chapter. Here we have a very important Chinese dialect, Cantonese, 粤语, 粤方言, okay? And then we have Middle Chinese, Chinese in Middle Ages, Old Chinese. And written Tibetan, written Burmese. Okay, Tibetan and Burmese are different languages, but they are related with the Chinese. Okay, and we call them belong to the same language family. What's the reason? Here's the reason. We have evidence to show that the reconstruction of Old Chinese language or Middle Chinese language pronounced similarly of the same words with the written Tibetan and written Burmese. For example, in 普通话, we pronounce 我 as 我, okay? This is the result of evolution, pronunciation evolution. That means the ancient form, ancient pronunciation of 我 is different from that. What is the ancient pronunciation? Nga. Here, nga. Or in Middle Chinese, ngo. Here is a nasal consonant in front. Okay? Similarly, in Cantonese, modern Cantonese, ngo also has a nasal consonant. And this is why we call that the Chinese and Tibetan are related with each other, because the written Tibetan shows that the Tibetan form of 我 is nga. Very similar to the Old Chinese. Okay? And we have also other similar evidence, for example, the pronunciation of sun in different contemporary Chinese dialects, in Middle Chinese, Old Chinese, and Burmese. For example, sun here in 普通话 pronounced as sun, and with the front nasal, but tonal nasal. But in Cantonese, it's and with the label nasal, some. Okay, in Middle Chinese, the same. In written Burmese, sum, and with the same nasal consonant. Okay, they are common features of such pronunciations in different languages and different dialects. This is mainly the reason why we suppose that they are related with each other. This is called cognate. Cognate words means the words with a different but similar pronunciation and meaning in different languages. This is the major evidence that we show such languages are related with each other in ancient time. They share the same ancestors in history. Okay, we can also observe the consonants in Tibetan of the structure, distribution in different pronunciation methods. For example, here we have a chart showing 4 columns of the consonants in Tibetan. Look at the first row, ka, ga, ka, ga, nga, ga, ka, ga, nga. Okay? And you compare that with this row. 见七群夷. 见七群夷 shows only the consonant. Still remember this chart, right? 36 consonants in Middle Chinese language. Okay, 见七群夷 is the consonant part. 见 pronounced like a qi, k, 群 g, yi, ng. Okay, they are very similar, or exactly the same. We can say exactly the same as the such group of pronunciation of consonants in Tibetan. Okay, they have the same similar structure when you compare Tibetan and Middle Chinese. Okay, we need to consider Middle Chinese instead of contemporary Chinese because pronunciation and other aspects of the language change in history, right? So besides Sino-Tibetan In China, there are also other language families. For example, Altaic languages include Japanese, Korean, Manchu, Mongolian, and Turkish, and other Siberian and Central Asian languages. They are family with each other, which is different from Sino-Tibetan. And we have several versions, several examples in China of such ethnics, for example, Manchu, Mongolian, and Uyghur. And besides, there are another language family called Austroasiatic language. There are some examples of such ethnics use their language in China. Besides, beyond China, there are Vedic, 粤语, 越南的越, Vedic, Khmer, Gaomian, and others. Besides, another example of language family is Austronesian language. The Chinese member of such language family are indigenous languages in Taiwan, 高山语, 高山族的语言. Okay, besides, there are Western Malayo-Polynesian, Central Eastern Malayo-Polynesian, and other languages. They are related with each other. They form a language family, largely distributed among islands on Pacific. Okay, so that means those are language families in China. Chinese language can refer to all of them, or all the members of them in general. But here, in this course, I use the term Chinese language not in this sense, but only refers to Chinese language of Han people, Hanyu. Okay, here on this map, it shows the dialects of a Han language. We typically divide the Han language or Chinese language into 10 dialects. We have a particular chapter of dialects later in this course, so I will only talk about it in general. Here are the southern dialects. They have different names, they have different region, and they are different from each other, mainly in pronunciation. And here on this map, it shows the southern dialects and Mandarin, and also the different version of Mandarin. Okay, remember, what is Mandarin? Mandarin is Guanhua, right? Guanhua, Mandarin. And Guanhua varies. The different version of Guanhua Mandarin varies greatly, right? For example, I'm from the region, I'm from Tianjin, so I'm from the region of Jilu Guanhua speakers. And besides, we have also Dongbei Guanhua, Beijing Guanhua, Jiaoliao Guanhua, Zhongyuan Guanhua, and others. So this is the complex situation of Chinese dialects. Okay, I'll give you an exercise. Here is a blank map. Can you still remember the geographical distribution of Chinese dialects? If you can draw the boundary of different regions of Chinese dialects on this blank map. Okay, so what's the difference among different dialects? One of the very important difference is tone. Tone is very obvious feature of Chinese language. If you compare Chinese language with, for example, those European languages, because most European languages have no tone at all. But Chinese use the tone as a very important feature to distinguish meaning among different words. Okay, in this chart, we can observe that different dialects have different even number of tones. For example, most of the Mandarin, 北方话, 官话, okay, have 4 tones. The typical example of Mandarin, the dialect of Beijing, have 4 tones, include 5, 5. What's the meaning of 5, 5? This is the height of pronunciation, the pitch of pronunciation. I will illustrate it a little bit later. Okay, 5, 5, 3, 5, 2 and 4, and 5, 1. But, for example, the dialect of Wu, dialect of Xiang, dialect of Gan have different version of dialects, different number, even numbers of tones. I think the dialect with the most tones, categories of tones as Yue, Cantonese. There are 9 tones in Cantonese language, Cantonese dialect. Okay, here shows the rationale of the tones of Mandarin, 普通话, for classifications. We usually use the term of 阴平、阳平、上声、去声, or 一声、二声、三声、四声, to refers to this for classifications. Okay, the number here used 5, 5 refers to the height. The speed of pronunciation when you pronounce a syllable. This is something related to phonetics. I will illustrate the rationale of them later on the next chapter. And another feature of difference among dialects is syllable. That means different dialects pronounce the same word differently in terms of their syllable. For example, 口, the mouth, 口, mouth, okay? In Beijing, dialects pronounce as a 口, but in Suzhou, pronounced like a 区. Nanchang, 区. They are different. Okay, this is a standard how we and why we different dialects of Chinese language. Here's another chart showing the difference of the same words in different dialects. For example, 朵 in Beijing dialect pronounced 朵, but in Wuhan like a 朵, in Suzhou like a 斗. Okay, so how to pronounce them? How do we understand the different symbols here used to represent different pronunciation? This is the major part that we will learn in the next chapter, which is the IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. In this chart, you will understand how to pronounce different vowels using different parts of your mouth. Okay, this chart shows the hypothesis. That means this is not a definite conclusion, but it's supposed by some scholars. The Semitic split off from all other Sino-Tibetan family members around 6,000 years ago. That means Chinese language, the ancestor of Chinese language, differentiate from other related languages 6,000 years ago. And after that period, we can call that Proto-Chinese and later Chinese language. And on this chart, you can also observe that the splitting of among different dialects of Chinese language is something similar to the time when English differentiated from Danish or German and other Germanic languages. Okay, another hypothesis shows that Min Fangyan, the dialect of Min, is the first one that separates from other group of dialects in Chinese language. The dialects mean separate from others even during the Old Chinese period, earlier than Middle Chinese. This is one of the reasons why we are not easily able to use Guangyun as the evidence to study Min dialect. Okay, holding such ideas, we can clearly understand what is the contemporary Chinese. Through history, contemporary Chinese refers to the latest one, the newest one. We usually use another term, modern standard Chinese language, to refer to contemporary Chinese. It is also the major part that we will study in this course. And contemporary Chinese, we sometimes use the term Mandarin in the narrow definition, or use the Putonghua. We will study the structure and function of Putonghua in this course. Okay, in general, in this course, I have talked about the definition of linguistics, language, and philology, and also Chinese linguistics. And I also distinguish Chinese linguistics from Chinese philology, the old version in history. I already talked about the stage of Chinese language evolution. And also, I defined contemporary Chinese here in this context. This is the major part of this chapter. Thank you for listening.